How is it going, everyone? So we are live on day 5 with event handling and the form tag. Sorry for the delay. There was a slight technical issue at my end, and the class got delayed. Let's wait a couple of minutes for others to join. And yeah, we have an interesting class for today. So, how have you guys been doing so far? Did you guys complete the typewriter effect? Did you try to implement it on your portfolio? Let me know in the comments. You're experiencing a voice break? Okay, give me a sec. Okay, is the voice better now? Or is it still breaking for you? Let me know in the comments if the voice is still breaking up for you. Okay, cool. All right, that's great. So yeah, you let me know. Oh, it's still breaking. What seems to be the problem? Just give me another sec. This is not something that I want to waste your guys' time on, but is it breaking now? Okay, most of you are saying that the voice is clear now, so all right. So you guys can let me know if you were able to, proceed with the homework from last time. Did you guys work on your portfolio? So yeah, we will be learning basic concepts. There was a question in the chat whether we will be moving from basic to advanced. Yes, that is the idea. All right. So some of you were able to work on the portfolio, and fine. But uh, yeah, some of you are saying still there's some issue with the voice. Mm, just manage for today. Let's figure out what the problem is. And let's get started with today's class. And all right, so today's class is about event handling. So let us first understand what is event handling. So whenever a user is interacting on the website, right? So for example, if you're typing something, or you're doing a mouse click, or you're moving a mouse around, these are all events or user interactions, right? So clicking of the mouse, that is an event. Moving the mouse, that is an event. Typing some text in an input field, that is an event. Pressing a key. So all of those are events, right? And we want to be able to respond to such events. So for example, when the user is clicking on a button, right, and we want to show some message to the user, so we need to be able to respond to such an event, right? So um, so we have mechanisms available using which we can listen to events, and when those events occur, we can respond to those events. All right. So now we'll start looking at how to listen to an event and how to respond to an event. So let me open VS Code. So I have everything set up already. We have an index.html file. There's a main file for the JavaScript, and there's a CSS file for adding all the style sheets. So first thing that we will be looking at is how do we add an event, right? So what we will do is we will be adding a button, right? And we will give it the text click me, right? And we are interested on the click event, right? We want to listen to the click event on this element. So we will say on click, all right? And what we will do over here is that we will define a function handle click, all right? And once the user clicks on the button, we want to show an alert on the browser. We will say you have clicked the button, all right? And what we need to do is we need to link this function to this event. So what we will say that, let me just copy the name of this function and let me paste it here. So what will happen is when the user clicks on this button, right, the on click event or the click event will be raised. Once that event has been triggered, we have provided a handler for that event, right? We want to respond to that event, so we have provided a handler, which is a function, right? So this function will get called whenever the user clicks on this button, and then this piece of code will get executed. So let's see how this is working. So we have this button over here, click me. Let me click on this, and now it is showing an alert, you have clicked the button. All right. So this is how you can add a event. This is how you can listen to an event, and this is how you can handle an event. All right. Let me zoom in the font size. Some of you are saying that the screen is not clear. I hope it is clear now. You guys can see it properly. Okay. Is it the issue with everyone that you guys are not able to hear properly and not able to see the screen? I mean, is the screen clear? Because I'm getting a few comments that the screen is not clear. If you want, I can zoom in a bit, but uh, let me see. What is the zoom level? It's at 200% actually. If it is blur, can you guys check your video settings for YouTube? Try to view the video at 1080p if possible. Some of you are saying the voice is not loud enough. Okay, give me a sec. This is a waste of time. Sorry about that. I don't know why this is happening. All right, so how is the voice coming in right now? Okay, most of you are saying the voice is loud and clear. Everything is fine. Okay, let me resume the class. Okay, great. So we looked at how to add um, how to listen to an event and how to respond to an event. So this is one way of doing it. This is an old-fashioned way of doing it. Another way that you can do the same thing is that we can, for example, let's give this button an ID. Okay. For example, click me, and what we will do is we will say document dot get element by ID, and the value for ID is click me, and what we will say is on click. This is one way, and then we basically uh, give the reference to the handle click function like this. Okay, and then we can get rid of this. So we basically got the element by ID, and using JavaScript, we are listening to the on click event, and when this event occurs, it will invoke this handle click function for us. So let's try this in the browser. So now when I say click me, it is giving me the same message. Okay, you have clicked the button. Okay, then there is another way of doing the same thing. This is the recommended way, but I'm just showing you the different ways by which you can add an event and listen to an event. So this is the recommended way that we will be looking at right now. So what we want to do is we want to get the element by ID, but we want to say this element dot add event listener, then the name of the event that we want to listen to. As you can see, there's a large list over here, a large list of events to which we can listen to. We are interested in the click event, right? And once again, the second parameter that we pass over here is the same function as before. You can give the name of the function that you want to be called when this event happens. Okay, so this is the recommended way of adding an event listener. So we will pass the reference to the handle click function. Either we can do it like this, or we could have also written the function over here like this. Okay, and whenever this event will occur, this function will be invoked. Okay, so now when I say click me, you can see we are still seeing the alert. All right. So the earlier way, if you guys are not clear, so over here we are defining the function. Earlier, what we had done is we had already defined the function. We were just giving the reference to the function over here. Okay, so there are two ways by which you can provide the function over here. Either you can give the reference to the function if it is already defined, right? Or you can define the function right here. Okay, so these are the two ways by which you can pass the function. So it depends from use case to use case. If you want to reuse a function at multiple places, right, you can have a common function over here, and you can pass the same function reference for different event handlers. But if you have a different function, like you have a different functionality to happen on each kind of event, you can provide the function right there, since it's not going to be reused for any of the other event handlers. Okay, so we have looked at how to add an event handler. Let's take a look at a few more examples, and what we will do now is, let's do one thing. Let's change the text for this. Let's call it as start. Let me create another button. Let's call it as stop. Okay, So far we have looked at how to add an event listener. Now we will look at how to remove an event listener. All right, so what we will do is, let's give it an id stop, and let's give this the id start. All right, and here what we will do is, we will add a event listener right on the document itself. That means the entire screen. Okay, so we will add an event listener for the entire screen. Earlier we were just adding an event listener for something that was just happening to the button, right? So what we will do is, we will listen to the mouse over event. That is when we're moving around the mouse, so that is known as the mouse over event. And we will create a anonymous function over here. It's not necessary that this function needs a name, right, since we'll be just using it over here. And what we will do is, we will be logging something in the console. So let's say console.log. So another important thing that we need to understand is, when an event occurs, right, and its handler is called, which is basically this function, it is called with a parameter known as the event object. All right, so this event object contains information about the event. Okay, it tells us certain things about the event. So what we will do is, we'll just log this event object. All right, and what we want to do is, when we click on the we're getting the start button, and when we click on it, what we want to do is, we want to start listening to the mouse over event. Okay, and similarly, let me duplicate this. Let's get the stop element and listen to its click event. And what we will do is, we will remove the event listener of mouse over on the document. All right, so when stop is clicked, we will stop listening to the mouse over event. And since we're using the same function over here, what we will do is, let's give it the name handle mouse over. Okay, and let me cut this from here and paste it here, since it's a common function and we are reusing it at both the places over here. So let me get rid of this, and I will just pass the function reference over here, and I'll do the same thing over here as well. Okay, because we are listening to the mouse over event over here, and this is the function that we want to be called when this event occurs. And similarly, when we click on the stop button, we will remove the mouse over event listener and the function which is being called when this event happens. Okay, all right, so we have made this change. Let me open the console, and when I'm moving the mouse right now, nothing is happening. When I click on start, and now when I'm moving the mouse, you can see that it is logging something on the screen. Okay, so whenever I'm moving my mouse around over here, it is logging all of this information on the screen. So as I had told you, whenever this function is being called, it is called with this event object. So let's look at this. If you see over here in the console, so basically it is telling us, since this is a mouse event, it is telling us the X and Y coordinates. So this is the entire screen, right? This would be 0, 0, right? This point is 0 on the X axis and 0 on the Y axis. As we are moving, we are getting a value for the X and Y coordinates at that point of time when the mouse was over, right? Um, then The other thing that is of interest to us is it's we have this target property, right? So the target property, if you see, um, in this case, it is the HTML element, right? When so if I expand this, the target property tells us the element on which this event occurred. So if I move, let me just clear this. If I put my mouse over the start button, right now, if we look at the mouse event, the target should be the start button. You see that? So the target property within the event object tells us the element on which this event was raised, the element which raised this event. Okay. So the mouse over right now happened on the button element. Previously, it was happening, on the entire HTML. If I now hover or move the mouse over the stop button and we look at the logs, right? And if we see the target now, it is telling us that the event was raised from the stop button. Okay. So I just wanted to bring to the notice. I wanted to bring to notice that this object is useful for us. Different type of events will have different properties and information associated with that event. We'll be looking at a couple of more different types of events and their properties as well. But this is what I wanted you guys to be aware about. Okay, and so now what I will do is let me click on stop. And now when I'm hovering over all of these elements, nothing is happening. All right. So the reason is when I clicked on stop, it removed the event listener from the document and it stopped listening to the mouse over event. That is why now nothing is being logged in the console. If I click on start once again, you can see that as I'm moving my mouse around, uh, the value is being logged to the console. Once again, if I click on stop, nothing is happening. All right, none of the events are being logged to the console. So I hope this part is clear to you guys, how you can add an event and how you can start listening to an event and how you can stop listening to an event. Okay, let me know if it's clear to you guys. All right, so let me move on to the next topic that I wanted to show you guys. Um, so another thing that you must have seen is that we can either add the event listener to a specific element or we can add it to the entire document. So it can be we can listen to uh, an event occurring on any element, right? It can be either the entire document or a specific element. Okay. All right. And the next thing that we want to do is let's learn about another tag that we'll be using quite a lot. That is the input tag. All right. So the input tag is used for accepting the user's input. Okay. So the most basic type is input type text, and it is also a self-closing tag, which means that you do not need a closing input tag for this. And let's see, let's do one more thing. Let's give this a label as well. Label HTML, or rather for, and let's give this a name. So for example, I want to enter the username, for example, and this label is for the username. All right, and we will say username over here. So now you can see that this label has been added and this is the input. The reason why we added this for attribute is that when you click on the label, hang on a sec, am I making some mistake? Label, okay, let's give it an ID on this one, ID equals username as well. So when I click on this label, do you notice that the focus is directly going on to uh, the input box? All right. Another thing is right now, if you see, if I'm typing something, it is giving me this autocomplete. Suppose I want to disable this property, so I can set this autocomplete property as off. Now when I'm typing something, it is not giving me those suggestions. So it's up to you whether you want to show this feature or not. For now, I'll keep it off. Okay. And then after that, what we will do is, so this input element has a attribute known as the value. Okay. So initially we can set it as empty, or if we want to give it a default value, we can do that as well. So for example, the username is admin. If I set this over here, we can see that this text is appearing by default. Okay. And another attribute that we can set to this is the placeholder, and we can say enter the username, for example. Okay. And if I get rid of this, you see the placeholder text. When the input box is empty, the value set to the placeholder attribute is shown over here. All right. Now what we want to do is we want to uh, listen to certain events on the input. So for example, we are interested in logging to the console every time a key is pressed. So there are different events available. Um, so the event that we will be listening to is the key up event. There is key up, key down, and key press. So for example, when you press the key down, right, when the key is going down, um, it's the key down event will be triggered, and also the key press. As you lift your finger up, the key will be coming up and the key up event will be raised. So we are interested in the key up event right now. Okay. And we want to listen to it. So let's give it a handler over here, or an event listener function. Okay. And we'll just pass the uh, we'll just give the name E. So the event object that is associated with this event, we have that available to us. First, we will just log the event as it is to the console. I just want to show you the couple of properties which are available, and what we will do is we will also get rid of this value for now. All right, so it is showing us enter the username. I'll do one thing, I'll just put this inside a div so that it comes on the next line. Let's save this, and you can see that it's available, or rather, and let's also use the br element to add additional spacing. Okay, that did not work, so never mind. Let's leave this out anyways. So let me press the key A. You can see that it is telling us that this is a keyboard event. Okay, then we can see that the key that was pressed, that is A. So this event, so if we are just interested in logging the keystroke, we will just say event dot key. Okay, then this is the ASCII value for the letter A. Then if we look at the target, it is this input element on which this event was raised, right? And another thing that is of importance to us is the type. So this is telling us which type of event has occurred. So it is the key up event. All right. And yeah, so as we are pressing the keys, you can see that the event will get fired. It is telling us the key which is being pressed. Also there is this code. and whether the control key was pressed or not. So suppose if I press shift and A, you can see that the left shift was pressed and also the key code A was pressed. So it is giving us all the information about all the keystrokes that are happening. Okay, if I just want to log the key which is being pressed, I can just say event.key. All right, and now as I am pressing a key, it is logging that one by one. Okay, so we learned another new event handler, which is the key up. So this works on all the input type elements. There are different types of input available. So for example, this is of type text. Suppose we are interested in numbers only, right? So we can uh, change the type to number, and now if I try to press a key, right, the key is being pressed but nothing is being shown over here. That is because now this has been converted into a number box. All right, so we can only enter digits now, and we also have these arrow pointers to increase and decrease, increase and decrease the values. All right, so there are a large number of input types available, like number, email, okay, um, and checkbox. So now it is showing us a checkbox, and we also have radio. Okay, so it is showing us a radio button now, and so there are a large number of different input types available to us based on what we are trying to do. Let's switch this back to text. All right, and so another thing that we can do is, suppose what I want is whenever the user is pressing so suppose I do not want the special character exclamation mark to be typed inside this text box, right? Or I do not want the number 2 to be pressed, for example. Okay, what I can do is I can check inside here which is the key that was pressed. So I will say if e dot key equals, okay, uh, suppose I don't want the digit 2 to be typed inside this text box, right? What I can do is I can say e or event dot prevent default. Okay, so what this will do is that the default behavior is that when you press the 2 key, you see that value inside the input box. When I say event dot prevent default, it is preventing that behavior from happening. All right, so now if I type the key 2, okay, give me a sec. What is the key code? 2 okay, and let's just see if I press 2. Hang on a sec, so this should have not happened. Event dot key equals 2. Let me do a quick refresh. This is odd. Okay, event dot stop propagation, for example. Okay, so the reason why this is working is because, as I told you, there are different events which are available to us. So the first event that occurs is the key down event, right? So that itself is allowing the key, the key press to happen, okay, or that thing from happening. The key up event occurs when we have actually lifted the finger up from the key. So if I change this to, for example, key press. Okay, and if I save this now, this is 1. Now I'm typing 2. You can see 2 is being typed. You can see that it is being logged to the console, right? But it's not allowing me to, it's not visible over here, right? So let me get rid of this. Okay, I'm pressing 3, it's going through. I'm pressing 2, it's not showing in the input box. So these events also have, like, these keyboard events are raised in a particular order. So the first thing that happens is that you press a key, so key press happens, then the key goes down, so the key down event happens, then when you lift the finger up, the key up event occurs. Okay, so let's just look at this very quickly. Key press, key down, and key up. All right, and let's log over here as well. Key up, key down, and key press. All right, so let's see the sequence of events when I'm pressing 1. So the first, okay, so I was wrong. The first thing is the key down event, then the key press, and then the key up, right? So that is the first event to get triggered when I'm pressing 2, right? So the key down went through, but the actual registration of the key happens when the key press occurs, right? Since I prevented the key down event itself, the key press did not happen, right, correctly for this, and the key down or key up event also occurred. So when the key press event happens, that is when the value is actually typed inside the input box. Okay, so that is why when we are saying over here, when the key press event happens, do not do anything. So the key down went through properly. Over here we prevented the default behavior from happening, so 2 did not get typed, and these events did occur. All of the events did occur, it's only that we prevented the default behavior of that event from happening, which means the value did not get typed inside the input box. Okay, so if I press any other value, for example A, so key down, then A happened, then key press happened, and then key up happened. So it's also important where you're trying to stop that event from happening, right? So you need to prevent that event from happening at the correct level in case of keyboard events. All right, okay. So I hope looking at the logs, it's clear the difference between the 3 events: key up, key press, and key down. Okay. So this is how you can prevent the default behavior of an event from happening by saying event.prevent default. Okay. There are other events as well. So for example, I am interested in whenever we move out of this text box, we want to we're interested in that. So let's listen to the event document dot get element by id username. Okay, and then we pass a function over here, and it accepts the event object. So we'll just say e for event, right? And then, or rather, let's keep it as event so that it is meaningful to us. All right, and what we want to do is, sorry, I need to actually add the event listener. So I'll say add event listener and the event that I'm interested in, which is, for example, focus. All right. So whenever we focus inside the input box, uh, we will basically log this to the console. Okay, console.log focus event happened. Okay, so we got the element by its ID, we added the event listener of focus, and then this function will be invoked every time we focus on this element. So when we focus inside this element, you can see it is saying focus event happened. Similarly, when we focus out of this element, there's an event for that as well, which is known as blur. Okay, so this is on focus. Now when I tab out of it, focus is lost. So here I just need to say blur event happened. Okay, so this is focus and then this is blur. So we have different types of events available to us. So we can listen to multiple events on the same element. Okay, it is possible to listen to multiple events as well. All right. Uh, the other thing that is of importance to us is how these events are captured. Okay, so what we will do is, let's create a div, let's call it as parent, and inside that we want another div, let's call it as child, and within that let's add a button and let's give it an ID as sub child, for example. So this autocomplete happened thanks to the emit feature. So we have this parent, and inside this we have a child, and within that we have a button. Let's say subchild. Okay, and let's call this as child, and let's call this as parent. Okay, and let's add a little bit of styling over here. So we'll say dot parent. Actually, let's give it the class box, and we'll say width equals 400 pixels, height 400 pixels, and we want to give it a background of coral, for example. And then with it, let's create a class called child, and let's just give it a background of royal blue. And another thing that we will do here, over here, is let's give this a padding of 16 pixels, and the child has the width as 50% of its parent, and height is also 50% of its parent. Let's go to this element. So we need to add the box class over here as well, so that the box related styles are applied. So you can see that, let me move this over here. You can see that a box has been created of 400 by 400, then this padding has been added, and then we have a child which is 50% of the height and width of the parent, and within that we have the subchild button. Now what I want to do is, let's add click event handlers to this. So document dot query selector. So query selector works with class CSS selectors, right? So you can either give a class name or an ID. Okay, so we are interested in the parent, so we'll say dot parent because we are targeting the element by its class name. And then we want to say add event listener. We want to listen to the click event. All right, and we'll just say, we will log over here that parent clicked. Okay, Then similarly, what we want to do is we want to get the child element, listen to its click event, and we will say child clicked. So basically you can add a click event handler to any of the element. It need not necessarily be just a button. Okay, you can add that to div as well. um, all right, so we have added click event handlers for parent and child, and let's get the button by using document.getElement by id. We have given it the id subchild. So we find the button using its id, then we say add event listener. We listen to the click event. Let's give it a function over here, and we will say subchild clicked. Okay, now when we're clicking on the parent, we are seeing parent clicked. Then when we are clicking on the child, which is inside the parent, you can see it is printing child clicked, then parent clicked. And when I click on the subchild, it is telling us subchild clicked, then child clicked, and then parent clicked. Okay, so this behavior of how an event is captured this particular way, right? So right now we are just clicking on the subchild, but we're getting a log statement for all of the elements. All right, so this phenomena is known as event bubbling, right? So all of these three elements have a click event handler to them. Okay, so we are listening to the click event for all of these elements, and so what is happening is when I'm clicking on the child, its click event uh, is raised, then its handler is invoked, then the event bubbles up to its parent. Okay, so I clicked on subchild, so its parent is this element, right? The blue box. Okay, so then that event is propagated up or bubbled up to its parent. All right, so that is why we see this log statement being called child clicked. Okay, and then once the event handler for this blue box has executed, it is propagating or bubbling that event further up to its parent, and since its parent is also listening to the click event, we see that parent clicked. All right, so this is known as event bubbling, that the event bubbles up from the child to its parent. Okay, now suppose what I want is that when I click on the uh, on this subchild, right, on this button, I do not want this event to be propagated. So what I will say over here is that at the subchild level, I will say event dot stop propagation. Okay, and we need to pass the event object over here. This function is available on the event object. Okay, all right, so now when I'm clicking on subchild, you can only see that subchild clicked is being logged only because we prevented the event from being propagated upward to its parent. Okay, so this is known as event bubbling, and this is how you can stop the propagation of an event. Okay, suppose I want the event to be propagated from the subchild to the child, but not to the topmost parent. Okay, now when I click on the subchild, you can see it says subchild click, then child click, but it's not being propagated to the parent. All right, so this is so all of the events right now, they were being captured in the bubbling phase. Another way by which you can change this behavior is that we can pass a flag over here, and if we pass the value false and Let's give the value false over here as well. Okay, and let me just comment this out. Okay, so earlier, if you remember, whenever we were clicking on this button, it was saying subchild click, then child click, then parent click, right? Let's see what happens when I click on subchild now. Okay, uh, okay, it is giving us the same thing. Hang on a sec, maybe I made a mistake. Type string, event listener or object. Hang on a sec. Use. Give me a second. I think I'm making a mistake with the syntax. Event. So what we need to do over here is that yeah, actually I need to say true over here. The default value is false itself, so I need to say true over here. All right, so the third parameter is known as use capture actually. And let's do a refresh. Now if I click on subchild now, right, it is giving us that parent clicked, child clicked, and then subchild clicked. All right, so the reason is that now it's the event is being propagated from the parent to child and then to its subchild. Okay, so there are two phases, the event capturing phase and the event bubbling phase. Okay, so the capturing phase happens from the root level, that is the event starts being captured from the parent to its child and then the subchild. Okay, and in the bubbling phase, the event is propagated from child, subchild, from child to its parent and then its parent. So whenever we specify this third option as true, it starts capturing the events in the or rather it starts raising those events in the capture phase. Okay, the default behavior is the bubbling phase, and when we set the third parameter to true, it is the capture phase. Okay, so is this clear to you guys, like how event propagation works and the different ways by which you can capture an event? Okay, you can change this behavior by specifying this flag. Okay, all right, so let's do one thing. Let's take a short break over here, and hopefully the issues related to voice and everything are is less right now. But is the screen clearly visible to you guys? Let me know, and also let me know whether you guys are able to follow along whatever we have learned so far in today's class. Okay, whether it's making sense to you. What is an event? Okay, there are many events. The resources have been shared, so when you do the assignment on the Devsnest website, uh, uh, which is related to today's session, all the links are there. You will get to know what is an event, the different types of events, how you can listen to an event, how you can remove an event. So all of that information is shared with you. Okay. Uh, okay, quite a lot of you are asking what is the theme that I am using. The theme that I am using is Night Owl. Okay. So you are asking what is so there's a question in the chat about what is the difference between background color and the background attribute. So using the background attribute, you can specify, actually it is one of those, give me a sec. So what we will do is, let me bring this over here. It is one of those properties which consists of multiple subproperties. So you can see that when we use the background attribute, we can also specify a background image. So background color is a subproperty of the background property itself. So if we directly use background color, we can use any of these properties individually, or we can use the parent property itself, right? We can also set a background image. So for example, instead of color, if I say over here URL and specify the URL of some image, so for example, let's go to google.com image for JavaScript. Okay, let's copy the image address, and if I set the image URL over here like this, you can see that it is setting this background over here. Okay, so not only that, you can set a color as background, you can also set images as background. This is something that we look at later on as well in one of the future sessions, but somebody had a doubt, so I just wanted to clear that. Okay, all right. Yeah, so background is basically the main property, and there are sub properties in it. So you can specify, if you just specify the color, it picks up the background color property. If you just specify the URL, it understands that you want to set the background image, so it sets that property. And you can use a combination of those other properties as well. Okay. We'll be looking at those in detail in one of the upcoming sessions. Okay. So what we will do now is that let's look at some of the other event types as well. So far what we have seen is that we have looked at all the events which are occurring when the user is interacting with the website. But that is not the only type of event that occurs. Okay, it's not just the user interaction which are captured as event, and then those are informed to us. So for example, if we are interested in knowing when this entire document has been loaded and the content is visible on the screen, there is an event for that as well. So let's understand when to use that event. All right, so far, let me open VS Code. So if you have noticed, I have placed this script tag towards the end of all of the elements. What happens when I remove it from here and suppose I add it in the head? Okay, hang on. I think I lost it. Let me copy this and let me paste it in the head. Okay, like this. Let's do a refresh and let's look at the console. Okay, let me zoom this a bit for you guys. You can see that it is giving us an error, cannot read properties of null, reading add event listener, and this is coming from main.js line number 7. Let me click on this. So it is coming from this line. Okay, so basically it is telling us that cannot read properties of null. So what this means is that the result of this, we are getting this as a null. Okay, we're not getting the DOM node, okay, of the button element. Instead we are getting the value as null. Since null represents no values, it has no properties, so we cannot call this function on it. All right. So this piece of code has this piece of code has broken, and the reason for that is because we have this script tag over here. Even if I move it inside the body, the result will be the same. We are still getting the same error. Okay, so the reason is that if you remember the previous lesson, I had told you that the browser uses a special program known as the parser, which goes through each of these tags one by one. Okay, and it constructs the DOM tree, right? And it adds all of these elements one by one to the DOM tree. And when these elements are added, they're added as objects, right, known as the DOM node, which contain all the properties associated with an element. Okay, for example, this div, it is an element. This label, it is an element. All right, so what is happening right now is that this script tag is being added before we are adding any of these elements. Okay, so over here, what is happening is we're getting an error over here because we're trying to find this element in the document, but this element does not exist right now, right? The script was executed, but this element did not exist at the time when this script was executed. That is why when we move this to the bottom over here like this, and if we do a refresh, we are not getting any errors and all of the events are working properly as well. Okay, but so how do we solve this issue? Let me place this back over here. So the browser tells us that using an event known as DOMContentLoaded, the browser informs us that all of the elements have been loaded and the content is now ready and it is visible on the screen. So what we will do is we will listen to that event, and then once that event occurs, we will move all of this code uh, we will move all of this functionality once that event occurs, so that we know that all of the elements have been loaded and then everything should work correctly. So let's look at the DOM content event. So this event, either we can add it to the document level or we can add it to the window itself. So the window would represent the entire window. Okay, there's a window object as well which represents the entire browser. All right, so for now we'll just add it to the document which represents the HTML document that we have created. So we will say document.add event listener DOM content loaded, and then when this event occurs, okay, we want this function to be executed. So what we will do is whatever code we have written so far, and it is all related to document dot get the element and add an event listener, we will move all of that code over here. Okay, and if we look at the element, if we look at the body tag over here, the script tag is still at the top and all the content is coming after it. And if we do a page refresh, you can see there is no error and all of the events are working, as they were working before. All right. So we learned another event which is raised by the browser, which tells us that all of the elements have been passed and the DOM tree has been created. So now it is safe for us to attach event listeners and query all of these elements either by ID or use the query selector. So now we can find all of the elements and we don't have to worry about where the script tag has been placed, whether it's placed in the head, whether it's placed at the top of the body, or whether it's placed somewhere in between. Okay, so this is how we get to know when all the elements have been loaded and the DOM tree has been constructed, and now it's safe for us to attach event listeners to elements. Okay, all right. So it's not just that we have events available for uh, user interactions, we also have events which tell us that something has happened. Okay, this element has loaded or the entire document has been loaded. Similarly, there is another event known as the load event, but we'll not look into the details of that right now. It is similar to the DOM content loaded, but you guys can look it up yourselves. So that is your homework, and try to find the difference between the load event and the DOM content loaded. Okay. And if it's not clear to you guys, we can cover that up later on. You guys can get back to me on that. Okay. All right, so I guess we have covered quite a lot of event handling. Let's move on to the next topic, which is the form tag. All right, so what the form tag allows us to do is that it allows us to submit some user information, or rather we are able to collect some information, okay, certain fields, and submit that information to a server, okay, or post that information to the server, or send some data from the client side to the backend. If you remember from the first lecture, I had explained to you in the beginning what is front end, what is back end. So in case you have any doubts, you can just visit the initial few moments of day one, okay, where I explain you what is web development, what is front end, what is back end, what is server, and all of those things. All right. Um, so let's just quickly look at the form tag now. Okay, what I will do is let me create a new file. Let me call it as forms.html. Okay, form. Oops. Let me update the title as form tag. All right. So in order to use the form tag, we say form like this, and it has an action attribute. So I'll get back to this in just a bit. So inside the form tag, we can use tags which are used to collect information, right? So what we will do is we will add the input tag over here, input type text. Suppose we want to accept, let's give it a name, username, and the ID is username as well. Okay, and let's close this tag. So we are building a form which is, for example, used to accept the username and password. Okay, and let's say input password. Okay. So we'll give the name as password and the ID as password as well. Let's save this. So we need the mechanism to basically trigger a submission of this form, right? So for that, we will add a button over here, and we will say the type of the button is submit. Okay. So this basically indicates to this form that when you click on this button, it will submit these fields. So I will just say, so right now what we want is we want to do a login, right? I'm just creating a basic form where we'll just accept these inputs, and we will look at how to, process retrieve this information. I'll just go to the forms page now. Let's see if, what did I name this forms? Okay, forms.html. All right, so we have these two fields. um, Let me add a label over here as well for username. Let me call it as username. All right, and let's add another label over here for password, and let's give the text as password. Okay, so we see username, password, and then we have this login text. So whenever we click on this button, it will basically submit all of the fields which are inside this form. Okay, so we click on this, and did you notice that it updated this URL? It is saying username equals something and password equals something. Right now it doesn't have any values. That is why we're seeing this as empty. Suppose I type some text over here, and since we use input type password, we are not seeing the value or the text directly. Instead, we are seeing this dot dot dot. Okay, so this is another advantage of using the correct input type. And now when I click on login, we actually see this text over here, right? We do not have a server. So over here, you generally specify the path of the server and the action which needs to happen. We don't have a server right now, so nothing is happening. There's also an attribute for the method. So by default, it is get. That is why you're seeing everything being shown over here in the URL. Let me get rid of this. Suppose I change this to post, okay? And now if I type something over here and say login, it is just doing, it actually tried to submit the form, but since there is, that function isn't available, it's giving us this error, right? That the thing that you're trying to do, it's not possible. All right, we'll look at this in detail, like what this method means when we are learning about the fetch API, and we'll get to that in a couple of days time. So far we have just seen that the form field basically allows us to collect some information and submit it. We do not have a mechanism yet on how to submit the information. um, so we'll be looking at that as well in just a few moments, like how we can submit it even without a server. For now, let me just get rid of this, and it also has a name attribute. So for example, we give it the name login. And as I'm telling you guys, when we click on the button, it is trying to submit it. So what we will do is, let's create a new JavaScript file. Let's call it as forms.js. All right. And we will say document dot get, or rather query selector form. All right. And another thing that we need to do is we need to, let's add a script tag over here. Let's give it the source as forms.js, And another thing that we will do over here is that we will say document dot add event listener DOM content loaded. When this event occurs, this function will be called, and that is when we want to start attaching event listeners, right? So query selector. So as I was telling you, we whenever we click on this button, it tries to submit the form. So there's a special function on this known as submit. Okay, so there's an event which occurs when the form submission happens, though that is known as the submit event. And when that happens, we want to do something. Okay, so let's accept the event object over here, and let's log that in the console to see what it is exactly. And let's refresh this. Forms.html. All right, I have entered some text and some password. Now as I click on login, you notice that it it logged this value for a sec and then it was lost. That is because when the submission happens, the page, the form is submitted, and at the same time the page is refreshed. All right, so we do not want the page refresh to happen right now, so we will say event dot prevent default. Okay, and let me type something over here. Now when I click on login, you can see that a submit event has been raised. Let's look at the type. So the type is the form itself. Okay, and let's log the event dot target over here. Let's click on this once again. So we have the form object over here. Suppose I want to, so what I will do now is let me set the method as post, because it's not safe for us, it's not secure for us to see all of this information in the URL, right? I know a lot of this might not be making sense. What is this question mark, form name and input type, all of those things? Why is it being shown? What is it? It's all right if you do not understand it right now. We will be covering it later on, and you will learn quite a lot about it when you're learning backend. All right. So for now, just uh, just ignore that part. What exactly it is? Okay, so I have changed the method once again to post, and when I'm typing something over here, it's not updating that information in the URL of the browser. Instead, we are seeing this element, right? And what we want to do now is we want to retrieve this information. So let's see how we can do that. So we know that our event.target is the form, and within the form we have these two fields. Okay, suppose I want to access the value of this input element. What I can do is I can say event.target dot the name of the element that I'm interested in. All right, so within the form we have the username, right? Username. So let's log this in the console as well. So I'll say console.log event.target.username. Okay, let me type something over here. So it is giving us input type text name username. All right, this is coming from line number 6, which is this line. All right, so whenever we are trying to suppose we are interested in a particular field within the form, we can access it using its name. Okay, since event.target represents the form, and whenever we want to access any field within that form, we can do so using the name attribute that we are providing. Okay, and suppose we are interested in its value, so what we need to do is we just need to say As you remember, the input tag has the value attribute, right, which we're using to set its value. So what we will do now, we will say event.target.username.value. Let me type something over here. And now when I click on login, it is printing the text to the console which was typed. So this is how you can retrieve values which are present inside a form. Okay, suppose this input tag, suppose I have an input tag which is outside the form, right? Okay, and let's give it an ID outside, for example, and let's give the placeholder text. This is outside the form, for example, and let's see how to. So we have added this input element, and suppose we are interested in getting the value of this input tag. So what we will say is document, or this dot document, we will just say document dot get element by id outside. Let me just cross check, is that what I have named it? Yes, outside. And then we want to, we are interested in its value, right? So we will just say dot value. Okay, and let's log this to the console. Okay, and what we will do is we need this function to be called on certain event, right? So what we will do is whenever we are just document dot add event listener, whenever we're clicking somewhere or anywhere on the document, we want to get the form elements value. All right, so let's create a function over here and let's move this inside here. All right, so when I'm clicking anywhere, you can see that it's just there's no value present, so that is why this empty text is being logged. Let me type something over here. As I'm clicking, it is logging that value. Okay, all right. So this is how you would retrieve an element, input element's value when it is outside the form tag. You just get that element by its ID and just access the value property. But since we are inside the form, we can make use of the form and use the name of that, the name attribute which we have assigned to this input element, which is username. Using that, we can access its value. So similarly, if I add another field over here, for example, email, like this, I give the name as email, ID as email, right? Let's save this. So we have this third text box, and suppose I'm interested in its value. So let's refactor this code slightly. So I will call this as form. Okay, so that it's easier for you guys to understand. And then instead of event.target, we will just say form.username.value. When we're interested in email, we will just say form.email.value, right? Like this. So user, email, when I click on login, we are getting the values whichever we have typed over here. All right, so is this clear on how you can retrieve a element value from the form tag? Is this clear to you guys? Let me know if it's understood. Okay, so so this is how you can basically do something. This is how you can retrieve the values. Now, for example, um, what I want to do is I have this. I have another field. Okay, for example, input type text, and here I want to accept the telephone number. Okay, so I'll just say telephone, or rather let's call it as mobile, and let's give the ID as mobile as well. Okay, let's add a label for this. Let's give it the value as mobile. Okay, and here console.log form dot mobile dot value. Let's take this in a variable const mobile number equals form dot mobile dot value. Okay, and let's log this to the console like this. The mobile number is plus mobile number, right, like this. And let me just correct the label quickly. Mobile. Okay, so I am typing something over here which is text, and it's telling me the mobile number is ADFFAF. Okay, now let me enter a number over here. So it's giving me that this is the number. All right, now the type of this is a text. Okay, what I want to do is, if you notice over here that we will get the value as text. So another thing that we will learn right now is that when we go to the sources tab, and suppose you want to debug a file, right, what you will do is you can see all the files over here, right, and we are interested in debugging this file, so we will add a breakpoint over here. So debugging allows us to pause the code execution at the breakpoint, and we can see all the statements that have been executed so far. So let me click on this login button. We know that when we click on the login button, the submit event occurs and this function will get called. So this function has been called, and where I have added a breakpoint. So simply you add a breakpoint by clicking on the line number, and it will pause the code execution at that breakpoint. Okay, and then we can basically examine all of the variables which are available to us. So we have form, username, which is this, right? So we have this input element, and then if we scroll over this, we can see all the properties are available, like ID, and then if we scroll to the bottom, I think it should have this is in alphabetical order, should have the value attribute as well, as you can see. So this one is empty. If we look at form.mobile.value, you can see it is 2324 whatever, but this is a string, right? We are interested in getting this as a number. So what we can do is we can say over here parse int like this, which will convert this string to a number. Okay, and if you want to move the code execution to the next line, you can click on this button. Okay, This is to go down basically, uh, like this. There's a shortcut for this. When you hover over this, you should see the shortcut as well. Generally, it is the function F10 key, but you can cross check in your browser. And then let me move on to the next line. So you can see that mobile number is still a string. Let me press this button so that the code execution proceeds. Let's do let's just type some number over here, for example, and let me click on login. Let me see this value. Earlier it was a string. Now you can see that we're getting a number, right? We don't see those double quotes, so our pass int functionality has worked. Now suppose once again I add some text over here, click on login. Okay, I press F10, I go ahead, and we are trying to do a parse int over here, and it is giving us that now this is not a number because it was not able to successfully you know parse this, because this is string and it was not able to convert this into a number, right? So what we can do is, if mobile number uh, equals not a number, okay, we can alert to the user that you have entered invalid number. All right, so this is one way by which you can add some validation over here. Okay, hang on a sec. Let's go inside the sources. So we have typed this F10. This is not a number. Okay, give me a second. Let's evaluate this condition. It is giving us false. So basically you cannot say not a number does not equal not a number, because this is an issue within JavaScript that not a number does not equal not a number. So uh, basically what we can do over here is that we will just check if not if this to string equals not a number to string, for example. Okay, let me type something. Let me say login, and then it's showing us the message that you have entered an invalid number. Okay, now this is how you can handle the validation at your level. The better way would be that we use the appropriate input type. So there is input type available for telephone. Okay, and let me say auto complete as off for now. And now if I'm typing ASDF and we will just say that um, let me get rid of all of this. Okay, and what we will do over here is that So if we are not able to do this, we can basically show this alert. So this is one way, right, of doing the validations. I'll get back to this specific point a bit later on. Let me move on to another thing, like how we can actually add validations to a form. So what we will do is, suppose we want this username field to be required, right? We will say we will add this attribute required to this input field, okay? And when we add this required attribute, this makes this input field as required. And what we will do now is, let's get rid of this, prevent default. Now if I click on this login, it is, hang on a sec, it is showing us all of those autocompletes, and it's, so you guys might not be able to see the things properly, so let me just turn it off. And now since this username field has been set to required, when we click on login, it is giving us this message, please fill in this field, right? This is coming because we have set this autocomplete attribute. No, sorry, we have set this, I'm in the wrong file. Yeah, we have added this required attribute, and this is preventing the this is basically telling the form that you need to validate the fields when you're trying to do a submission. Okay, so the submission will not happen unless and until the validations, all the validations have succeeded. Similarly, we can add a so we are trying to access the email address, right? Let's change the type of this to email over here, and let me enter some value over here. And when I click on login, hang on a second, I need to set this as required as well. Okay, if we do not specify this attribute, that means that this becomes an optional field. All right, and we need to go to forms.html. Now when I enter some value, okay, so this will no longer check the username field. It will, hang on, sorry about this, I need to add the auto complete equals off. Okay, let me click on login. It is giving us the message for this. Let me fill this up. Now when I click on login, it is telling us please fill in this field. Now if I'm typing something, you can see that it is telling us that the email address should have the @ attribute. Okay, and after @ it should have the domain name. So for example, add@gmail.com. Now when I click on login, it is telling us that, hang on a sec, let me get rid of this check that we have added. Okay, and so we will add this. It's telling us we need to add @. Then we are just providing some domain, for example, gmail.com. Now when I click on login, it is not giving us any errors, right? So if I get rid of this, once again, you can see this field is required, as well as it needs to be in the correct format of an email address. Okay, so this is how we can add a validation within the form. Okay, as long as the form is invalid, the submit event will not get triggered, right? So what else we can do over here is that we can also define our own validation. Okay, so the way we do it is that, suppose I want to show a different message on this email validation. Right now it is telling us that if Nothing is there after at the rate. It is telling us that please enter a part following, at the rate. Suppose what I want to do is I just want to display that you need to enter an email address. This is the message which I want to show. So in order to do that, what we will say is that we will get the email element. Okay, so we'll say document dot get element by id. So the name of the element is email. Then we want to listen to the there is another event known as input. Okay, whenever a value is being typed, there is another event type known as input. So the difference between key up, key press, and input is that if you try to copy the text from somewhere else and paste it, since that is not a key press event, the event, the change does not get triggered, right? Nothing will happen when you specify the event. When you're listening to the input event, it accepts keystrokes as well as uh, changes that you are or text which you're pasting into the element. Okay, so that is when you make use of the input element. So when this event occurs, what we want to do is we want to check if, so we will take the event object and we will just say const email element equals event dot target. All right, so this will give access to the input type email element, and you will just say if email element dot validity dot type mismatch. Okay, so we have access to the validity object, and within that there are different properties available. So type mismatch indicates that we have entered something other than the expected format. So an email address should have an at the rate and some value should be there, right? Suppose if I enter the normal text, it the validity of type mismatch would be set to true. Okay, because it is not in the format in which we expect the email address to be in. All right, so when that happens, you will say email element dot set custom validity. Okay, so using this we can add a custom message. We will just say please enter an email address. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to report this. So earlier what was happening is when we were clicking on the login button, only at that point of time the validations were being triggered. Now what we want to do is we want to trigger the validations as soon as the user is typing inside the email. Okay, so we'll say email element dot set custom validity, not set custom validity. Then we need to tell them then we need to tell that we need to report this validity. Okay, so this is to set the message and this is to trigger the validation, or inform the browser that we need to show the validation message basically. Okay, and if everything is fine, we just do not show the validation message. So we'll say set custom validity as blank. Okay, all right, let's do a page refresh. Let's type something over here. Now as I'm typing a b c, for example, I'm going to check Type email ID, email required, autocomplete off. Okay, so we have set document dot get element by ID. Just let me verify if this event is being triggered. So we will say email element dot value. Okay, let's open the console. Okay, so the event is being triggered. Let's try and debug what is the issue. So we'll go inside forms.js. Okay, so email element dot validity, and it is telling us the type mismatch is true. Then we are saying email element dot set custom validity. Let me just check if I have spelled it correctly. Please enter an email address and then report validity, reportvalidity. Okay, let's debug. It did not. Give me a moment. Let's type something once again. Let's just quickly check this in the console. It is telling us that the validity of type mismatch is undefined. But let me just copy this. Okay, yeah, I have misspelled it over here, right? It says missed match. Okay, so make sure that you use the correct spelling. So let me just paste the correct spelling over here. Let's save this. So this is where debugging is helpful, right? We understood what the issue was. So if you know how to debug, you can easily figure out what the problem is. All right. So let's close this now. So as we are typing, it's telling us please enter an email address, and unless and until the email address is in the proper format, we will keep on getting that message. Now it is in the proper format, so we don't see that message. The moment I remove something, it is telling us please enter an email address. Okay, so this is how you can basically check a specific validity, and there are different types available. Once again, I have shared the links associated to the validity in the assignment. You will find it in the resources, the links, and you can go through that and understand all the other different types of validity, okay, which is available. Okay, so this is how you can change the validation message. Okay, that is the default message which was being shown by the browser, and this is how you can do that. Okay, all right, so this is how we can trigger validations. Another thing that we can do is uh, we can also make use of CSS. So what we will do is we will target the input element, and there is a special class or a pseudo selector known as invalid. What we will do is whenever an input is invalid, we will set its outline to 2 pixels solid, and we'll give it a color of coral. For example, let's save this. Now as I am typing something, give me a second. Oh wait, this file is not linked to this forms, right? So we need to link this style. So we'll just say link, and we will say style.css, So you can see both of these are invalid since this was required, right? So it is having this red outline, and unless and until uh, we enter the email address in the correct format, we were getting that red border. Okay, so visually also you can indicate to the user that something is wrong. We can change the outline, we can change the background color as well. Okay, so example, we set it to red. Okay, so you can see that this has been set to red. So we have different mechanisms available to indicate to the user that something is wrong. Okay, so this is how you can basically add a custom validation, and using CSS you can apply styling to invalid elements. Similarly, like we have invalid, we can also just check for valid elements. Suppose an input is valid, we can give it an outline of, rather than outline, let's give it a background color this time. You can say that it is light green like this. So all the valid fields now have a light green background. So do not try to give such colors in an actual environment. Show user a user friendly message, and you can give an outline. Okay, because this is looking quite ugly, so just give an outline of 2 pixels and solid. The outline property is similar to the border. All right, and you can see that all of the valid fields have this green outline. Okay, so now we'll move on to something interesting. Now you guys, we will be learning how you can deploy your portfolio and make it live. Let's see how we can do that. And what we will also be doing is that we will be learning how we can submit a form. Okay, so what I will do now is that I will quickly open the portfolio that is available to us. Me a moment. So let's go to files. Okay, file, open folder, and let's open the portfolio. All right, let's go to index.html. Let me click on go live. And this is where we had left off our portfolio, right, with this typewriter effect. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to make this live, right? We want to make it available to everyone so that you can share it on the internet, and so that it's not just local to your machine. So for that purpose, we will be going to a website known as Netlify. We will, you can sign up over here. And okay, let's try and sign up. I already have an account over here. So you will see a different screen after you sign up. You provide your details, email address, you successfully sign up. Then you basically go to sites. Okay, click on add new site, and you say deploy manually. Okay, then you should see this drag and drop folder. Okay, what I will do is I have my portfolio folder over here. Okay, and what we will do is it has all of the files we have created so far, right? So this folder, we will just drag it over here. There is some issue. So sometimes you get this issue, right, when you're trying to drag and drop. So what I recommend is you copy this URL and open your browser in incognito mode. Okay, let's quickly open this URL, and let me just drag and drop this. So in case you get that issue while dragging and dropping your files. Open your tab in incognito mode. You can see that it has created this link for us. Let me just log in. Since we are in incognito mode, it is I need to re-log in once again. So I'll just say Gaurav dot plus netlify and gmail.com. Okay, what was the password? All right, so that was the password, and you can see that it's telling me that my website is live. You guys would not, if you open it in incognito mode, you might have to log in once again. When I click on this URL, you can see that the website is live. Okay, go ahead. I'll share this link in the chat. You guys can try and click this. You should be able to see this website on your machine. So this is how we can easily deploy our websites. What we can do is let's click on Netlify. Let's go to sites. Okay. Now you should see the name of the site which has been created. Let's click on this. Then you have this, uh, these links available. Just click on site settings. Click on the click on this button which says change the site name. All right, and let's just give it this name, Gaurav's, or let's just say Gaurav portfolio, and let's try and save this. It's telling me that this site already exists, so let's just add some characters like 345 or whatever. Let's click on save. So now you have a more meaningful name. When I click on this, I can still see the website. Okay, so you can give your name followed by portfolio, or you can just give any combination, and that is how you can change the website. Now let's do one more thing. Let's go to our portfolio and let's add a form over here. I was practicing before, so let me just get rid of this. Or rather, what I can do is let me quickly explain to you guys since we are short on time. So what I have done over here is that I have created a form tag. Let me zoom this a bit for you guys. Yeah. So I have created a new div over here right after the technologies div, which has the ID contact me. Then within that, I've created a form tag. All right. The name of the form is contact. The method is post, and we have added a special attribute data netlify, and we have set it to true. Okay. I have added these fields. So label. Okay, let's build this part together. Okay, what we will do over here right now is let's get rid of this as well. Okay, and very quickly we will say h1 contact me over here. Then the next thing that we want to do is we'll create a div and we'll add a label. It is for the first name. We will say first name like this. Then we will have an input field which is of type text. So the name is first name, ID is first name. Okay, let's quickly copy this. Let's give it the value last name. Okay, and here we want to say last name. Let's open this localhost 55. Okay, I think it's 5501. Yeah. So you can see we have this contact me over here, and then we have first name, last name. And let's add another field. Okay, which is the message. So somebody will try and contact you. They will give their information, first name, last name, and the message. Let's make these fields required and the message as required as well. And this time, instead of the input tag, we will use a text area. So let's do one thing. We'll say text area. So let's give it the name as message ID message. So an input tag, you can specify only the text in a single line. Text area gives you a multi-line input control. You can define the columns and the rows in it. Okay, let's save this. So we have the text area available to us like this. Let's give the text over here as message. All right. Actually, this is not a self-closing tag, so it closes like this. Okay. And another thing, let's add some styling to this. So let's go to our style.css. And here what we will do is we will say we have our form which has the name as contact. Let's also give it the ID as contact. So let's target the form with the contact ID. Let's give it a max width of say 400 pixels. All right. Then what we want to do is we want to center this in the middle. So we will set the margin as auto. Okay. All right. So you can see that it has centrally aligned this contact me form. So this is another trick by which you can center an element. So when we are saying margin auto for this entire tag, it is giving a lot of margin over here and here, and since this tag has a width of 400 pixels, so it is occupying 400 pixels, and then it is giving a left and right auto margin. So it is basically placing the element in the center like this. Okay, then what we will be doing is let's give it a padding of 16 pixels, and let's give it a border as well of 1 pixel, and let's make it solid, and let's give a border radius as well. Let's set that to 16 pixels. Let me close this for now. So we have this rounded kind of an appearance over here. Then what we will do is within the form, okay, we have these labels, right? We will say display as block because we want the labels to come first and then the input like this. Similarly, the next thing that we want to do is let's give the labels a font weight. So font weight changes the boldness, like how bold your element is. Let's give it a font weight of 600. So you can see that this has become a bit bold than before. And another thing that we want to do is within the contact element, when there's an input, and within the contact when there is a text area, so this is how you can select multiple elements, and contact as a button, right? We want to give all of them a width of 100%. So let's go back to the browser. You can see that it's taking up the entire width, but do you notice that this space is uneven, right? That's because the if we inspect this element very quickly over here, and we see the box, yeah, the box size, so it is content box. Okay, so the width of this was 400, so the entire width of this content that the content part is taking up, that is 400, and additional border and padding is applied on top of that. Okay, so it is 400 plus all of this value. So what we want is that this element in its entirety should take up 400 pixels, right? So what we will do is, to fix that issue, we will say star, which selects all the elements, and we will say box sizing as border box. Okay, so this will set the dimensions not according to the content, but according to the value, according to the dimensions which we have set. So now you can see that it is equal on both the sides. Okay, um, another thing that we want to do now is very quickly, so we have this form available, right? Let's add the submit button as well. So have the button tag over here, type equals submit. All right, and we will say send. Okay, now so far as I told you, we do not have any server available, right? But Netlify allows us to post a form. So all we need to do is basically add this attribute data netlify equals true, like this. So when netlify sees this attribute, it will allow us to submit this form. Okay, so what we need to do now is basically we have all of these fields available with us, and since we have modified our portfolio, we need to redeploy it. So we go on the site basically. Okay, sorry, not here, site overview. We will go to site, rather we'll click on deploys. You see this drag and drop area over here. We will, let me reveal this folder inside the finder, and let's go to Chrome and once again drop our updated code over here. Okay, let me just quickly refresh this page. If you get this kind of error, just refresh the page and drag and drop once again. Okay, it's trying to upload. The deployment has happened. Let's click on our portfolio. We have this contact me section available with us. Let me just enter, for example, Pedro, whatever last name. Let me just cut this from here, paste it over here. Hey, do you know web development? Okay, now when I click on send, if you notice over here, we have added this attribute, right? And let's click on send. Okay, it basically performed the action of submitting this form. It submitted that information and we have got this message. Thank you, your submission has been received. Now, this is the default message which is shown by Netlify when a form submission happens. Now, let's click on back to our site. When we go back to our website and we click on forms, right? It shows the name of our form over here. Let's click on this and let's expand this, and you can see the first name field is available over here. Its value is Pedro, last name this, and the message, hey, do you know web development? All right, so as I told you, by default the form tag is used to accept inputs and submit that information. Since we do not know how to create a backend yet, we used Netlify's form submission feature uh, to basically submit our form from the client and receive that information over here. Okay. All right. And another thing that you can do quickly, let me go over that very quickly. You can go to the site settings. You can click on forms. Okay. And form notifications. You can click on email notification and you can give your email address over here. Let's go to this website known as temp mail. Let's quickly create an email address. So this should give us an email address. And let's copy this email address. Let's go back to our site settings. Let's paste that email address over here. You can select any form or you can select a specific form. So let's listen to a new form submission on the contacts form. Let's click on save. All right. So let's try to do another form submission now. So for example, test last name user email notification. Okay, let's click on send. Oh wait, that was my local this thing. Let's do a refresh quickly. All right, so test user, and hey, let's click on send. Your form has been submitted. Let's come back to temp email, and you can see that it is this email notification is now available to us. It has the subject with this information. All right, first name, last name, and the message. Okay, so you can add this contact me information uh, to your portfolio. You can deploy your site and you can make your website live, and you can also have people interact with your website and you can get their information. So you can use this when you start doing freelancing, or if you just want to connect with like-minded developers, you can create such a form and host it on Netlify. Just set the data Netlify attribute to true and you should get all of the information. All right, so that is how you can do all of this. I hope you enjoyed the session today, and I know you need to connect to Chai Pe Charcha right now on the Devsnest voice channel. So let's end the session over here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so take care, and let's meet tomorrow. Okay, bye bye. And please do share your portfolios, tag Devsnest, and share it on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media you're active on. Share it over there and share your portfolio with people and do tag us. And yeah, that's it. See you guys. Yes, definitely like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, it will spread this boot camp to others as well. So do that for sure. And you will get notified whenever there is a new video as well. Okay.